Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dog Eared Thoughts. I'm Michael, and I'm so happy you're here. So, April has come and gone, a whole month, and we're already into May. So, I don't know if everyone else is as shocked at how fast this year is going by, although I guess in some ways it's seeming just as painfully slow as always. But I don't know. I think it's flying by for me, at least the last couple months. Um, so, this episode, I want to talk about what I read in April. I read 8 books, and I've already covered a few of those in previous episodes as I went along in April. So I'm not going to rehash all of them, but I do want to focus on a few books that I really like that I haven't really gone in depth about yet. So I think those will be fun. I also want to do a quick update on my library haul video that I did a few weeks ago. If you'll recall, there were a few books that came out of that. Most of them were pretty big. And the question was, will I get through them before I have to return them? And so spoiler alert, yes, I did. So we'll talk about those real quick. And then finally, we'll do a little bit of what am I reading now? Because I've already finished 1 book in May. I'm currently concurrently reading 3 books as they go. So I'll give you a quick update of what I'm reading, and probably will give a little preview of what I'll actually be talking about in upcoming episodes. So I'm looking forward to talking about it and looking forward to hearing your thoughts about all of them. So, all right, let's jump on into it. All right. So in April, like I said, I read 8 books. And just to talk about a few of them that I thought, A, I hadn't talked about yet, but also there's necessarily, or at least a couple of them are names that I haven't seen before. So I wanted to give them a little bit of a platform to talk about, especially as I generally liked all of them of these that I'm going to talk about. The first is called The Man Made of Smoke by Alex North. And he wrote The Whisper Man, so some of you may be familiar with that. And definitely a highly rated book. I read that a few years ago, or at least a year ago or two, and really liked that. And this one is, you can tell that Alex has kind of an approach when it comes to um, children and bad guys, and what is the trauma that kind of gets left on these children as they encounter these horrible people. And this one follows a somewhat similar route, although it is has a nice multiple view point of view as you kind of go through it. So I think it's actually positive in that regard too. But the main thread is it follows a character, Dan Garvey, who is, as an adult, a criminal profiler. But as a young teen, he had a close run-in with a serial killer who had been kidnapping children at the time. And he kind of names it the man made of smoke because the man was very good at disappearing and not being seen. And he actually had an opportunity as that teen to maybe yell or say something, and instead his fear kind of froze him, and he didn't really say anything. And he's been carrying around a little bit of that guilt ever since. And on top of that, it also kind of blends and mirrors in with his father, who was a police officer at the time when Dan was a child. But then, as a retired cop, he continued to kind of trace this cold case of this killer, who did die under suspicious circumstances. But then also, are the murders still happening? And if so, what is the pattern that's happening in there? And not necessarily even children anymore. It is, are murders still happening, but they're still connected to the man that seemed to die so many years ago. And so that is the track and the continued through line in that, where Dan is following in his father's footsteps. His father has gone missing, so he's also under the trying to find his father, and at the same time returning to a place that has so much childhood trauma to him, and he has to relive a lot of that and kind of digging into what is going on, as well as a little bit of a viewpoint into uh, the children who are impacted so long ago. and all of that. I'm not going to go into major spoilers. I want everyone to kind of go in a little cold, but I will say is that the the twist or the way that this ends is not at all how I expected it to go. I really expected a bit of a darker ending, and not that it's not a dark ending, it absolutely is, but I actually expected something in a different vein. So it was definitely a good surprise, and the atmosphere, the way that Alex kind of creates this town and this island that this is all taking part in and whatnot, was really, really well done, and makes you really kind of build that dread up and the suspense up until it climaxes at the end. So absolutely a good book. It definitely has a good father-son kind of through line too. So if that's something that interests you, where maybe they didn't talk to each other enough growing up, or maybe there were opportunities. It's always those missed opportunities, and then how do you recover from those opportunities and kind of move on from there. So absolutely, I think if you liked Whisperman, you'll like this. I think in general, if you liked these kind of books, absolutely positive. So absolutely recommend this one. The second book is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. This one's definitely a different flavor. It's actually, I wouldn't say it's not something that I would normally read, but it's not necessarily always in my wheelhouse. But I found it engaging and definitely very different. Has a really unique approach. So the general plot is that there's three sisters, Gray, Vivian, Iris Hollow, who disappear as children in Edinburgh. And they were gone for a month. And when they return, they are different. Their hair is white when it was once black. They have these scars on their necks, and they seem to have kind of abilities to kind of convince people or make people do things. Not necessarily do things, but really kind of influence what people are doing. And each of those sisters kind of use that power in different ways as they grow up. And the main through line is Iris, who is the youngest of the three, as she's trying to navigate high school, trying to finish out trying to just be as normal as possible, when it's impossible to do given the past, but also just in general, like all these, she's so different. And when it turns out one of her oldest sisters disappears, Iris and Vivi have to follow the trail, and there is an absolute door into the Fey world, and it tracks through that, and it is absolutely kind of a different approach from that perspective. I think it's really kind of capturing or wrestling with identity, as with any book with teens, it's a constant battle of who am I, who do I want to be, who am I perceived to be, all of those things. But in this case, it's kind of a very literal question of like, who am I, and why am I the way I am? And there's definitely a supernatural element to it. There's I don't know that I would call this a horror book, but it definitely has some elements of that, especially towards the end, as you learn about why these sisters are the way they are. And it definitely kind of, takes a different turn at the end than I was definitely expecting. I wasn't quite sure where this was going to go, but it absolutely took a different turn. So I would highly say, if that's something that you really dig into, especially, Fae and kind of other worlds, walking through doorways and go from our world into a different world, things like that, absolutely is this is right up your alley. So I definitely think that it's something that, if that's something that you're into, go for it. I will say I liked it. I didn't love it. I think that it just wasn't necessarily as something that connected as closely with me, but I think it absolutely connects with others very well. And then the third one, Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. And Ava Reid has been very prolific in her writing. I love some of her earlier books, and I knew this had come out a couple years ago, a year ago or more, and it was always on my radar. And I finally kind of waited till a little bit of the hype built, kind of died down, and jumped into it here. And so this is a retelling, or I guess, a different view of telling of obviously Shakespeare's Macbeth, and specifically told by the perspective of um, Lady Macbeth, whose name in this book is called Roskilde. And the way that what is interesting about the way Reid has chosen to kind of approach this approach the story, or approach the view of how this story unfolds, is that Roskilde is, as with many things back then, was a marriage of alliance to Macbeth, and so she has to kind of follow along with this, and the general sense is that she has to cover her eyes because her father has created this story of that her eyes will drive men to madness, which is also kind of an interesting way of judging, like, is that a way of keeping his daughter pure? Is that a way of trying not to have witchcraft touch her in a different way or anything like that? I think in and of itself, it's a lot of, are we keeping the women in line, kind of, not only a viewpoint of the time, but also just in general, like, what is the story that the father kind of weaves for his daughter? But what we find out is that Macbeth is very much into the occult, and he is very much into witches, and he actually wants Roskilde for this power that she seemingly has. And so what comes of that is that Roskilde is able to use this in ways to, weave power within this system in Macbeth's world. Not necessarily maliciously, as kind of, at least initially, as as the play might seem, but more about survival, but also finding her sure footing in this realm, in this world that she is not used to. But I think the piece of it that really jumps into it is the title is Lady Macbeth, and that is a title that a woman, Roskilde, takes on through marriage. But is she really Lady Macbeth, or is she Roskilde? And like, those two things could be very different. And I think if you go into it with that viewpoint, perhaps she's not the first, second, or last Lady Macbeth. Although obviously, as it rolls through, as with the play, it ends in that fashion. But you kind of know where this is going because you know the play. But the question then becomes, like, who is Lady Macbeth versus who is Roskilde? And I think if the style, the writing of Scotland, and how Roskilde kind of views this world that she's moving into from France to Scotland, which is so very different. Absolutely, in that I think you could also tell that Reid has done her research in terms of how witchcraft and witches are viewed, or were viewed back then, as well as in that time frame, and kind of grappling with that. I do think that the Macbeth character himself is a little two-dimensional. He's a little too kind of obvious in a lot of ways, as is some of the other male characters. I think she writes the complexity of the female characters, which is great. But I think with Macbeth being such a critical character himself, he could have been a little bit deeper, or a little bit more three-dimensional, both physically and emotionally. So, but I absolutely like the book. I love Macbeth, the play. It is it is probably my favorite of all of Shakespeare's. So I love being able to dig into that and kind of soaking through that and looking through it from a different lens. I know at the time the book kind of received mixed reviews. I think a lot of people didn't love that Roskilde was from France, and kind of how that approach kind of tainted or changed their view of her. But I think that there's a lot to Reid's approach to this that is positive, and something that you absolutely can learn from. So I enjoyed it. I think, as you can tell, at least two of the three books that I'm talking about were definitely a very highly female-centric characters, and I think that's awesome. I love reading about that more and digging into that. So absolutely would recommend Lady Macbeth, and hope you pick that up if you haven't already. All right, so as I stated, I'm gonna do a quick update on my library haul. So a few episodes ago, I talked about three books that I got. Two of them were pretty thick. So the Count of Monte Cristo, Crime and Punishment being the two thick ones, and then also a nonfiction one, The Death of Trotsky. Absolutely crushed those three in the month of April. Amazingly enough, I think probably picked them up at the very end of March, but I was able to get through them in April. Um, I did absolutely renew Monte Cristo and Crime and Punishment a couple times before I got there, but I was able to get there. What I will say is that look, I'm not going to belabor Count of Monte Cristo. It is. It was a reread for me, although it had been a very, very long time since I had read it. So a lot of it was new or a refresher to me that I had forgotten, and so it was kind of like reading it. I wouldn't say completely for the first time, but definitely a lot of it was new. And what I had forgotten so much is that how quickly Dante kind of Dumas jumps right into the plot of the book, and it makes sense because if you know anything about the Count of Monte Cristo, it was written in kind of serial format for magazines or papers as a kind of a serial story. So would be incumbent upon him to not lose his readers too far, right away. Like you want to leave them wanting more, and each chapter kind of goes into that. He's also was paid by the word, which explains how thick this book is to some degree as well, and kind of repetitive description, but doesn't take anything away from it. It is still absolutely has to be a top five book of the 20th century, if not even more. It is amazing story of revenge and life and love and everything that goes into that. And if for some reason you haven't picked that up just because you're daunted by the thickness or size of it, I can tell you that it reads fast. You will be continually wanting to know, like, okay, one more chapter. Oh man, how did I need to read one more chapter, and just to see what is he going to do? How is this going to go? How are they gonna? How is he bringing this all together? And you will not be disappointed. Crime and Punishment, absolutely another classic. What I will say is obviously not as fast of a read as Count of Monte Cristo. It is a sad work. I think it goes through this. Again, there's been a lot written about Crime and Punishment in terms of the themes and of morality and law, and I would argue it's an incredibly good picture of also someone grappling with mental illness or other things, that an emotional despair that goes through that piece as well. It is a book of where the main character commits murder, because that is not a spoiler. It happens fairly early in the book, and then how does he grapple with that, and how does that change his interactions with everyone he works with, family, friends, loved ones. But it also does a really good job of showing the kind of the approach of rich versus poor, especially in Russia at the time. What are I think if you look at it as the serfs being freed, and how does that go? How do people who have no formal education or no way of getting through things, how do they make it in the world when the world is not built for them, and they're still trying to fight through that, and even if they are poor and wretched, do they deserve to die, right? And at whose hand, and all of those things of, are you playing God? And obviously there's a big through line in that as well. So again, this is one of those classics that should be on your list. Again, if you're a little intimidated by the subject matter, or the fact that it's Dostoevsky and it's how hard is it, is it hard to get through? It probably is not as hard to get through as some of his others, I don't feel. And I felt like this newer translation was really one that kind of fit and was able to I didn't feel like I lost anything. It had a lot of good, clear wording, but also you didn't lose anything in terms of the themes of or the approach as well. And then finally, Death of Trotsky, which was nonfiction book related to Trotsky and how he had been in exile in Mexico, and then what was the plot and approach of the KGB to kill him, specifically Stalin being somewhat obsessed with ridding what he deemed as one of his main enemy, of his approach and rule in the Soviet Union. This book is not very thick. It's not very long. And I would say it is very, it flows very strongly. It definitely goes from Trotsky, how he escaped, and then how he moved from country to country till eventually ending in Mexico, and why. It does not go very deep into Trotsky's, what he believed, or what is Trotskyism in terms of how does it fall under the communist, view, or difference between Stalinism and Marxist-Leninism and all of that. It doesn't go into a lot of depth in that. So if you're looking for that, this is not that book. This book is absolutely focused on building that story of what was his life in Mexico, how did he and his wife and those who protected them kind of struggle under this weight of expected death. And at the same time, how did these young revolutionaries and how did the KGB recruit people, not only necessarily to kill Trotsky, but also infiltrate his groups in Europe, and try to kind of break that down. As well as it definitely builds into the horror and the oppression of kind of the Stalinist purge, and how did that impact the KGB, and how did that impact how they approach things, especially the leaders, and kind of trying to determine how to keep Stalin happy throughout this process. And it definitely runs right up to pre-World War II time frames of what was kind of the viewpoint going into it, but then obviously that shifts once Germany starts knocking out on the doorstep of the Soviet Union. So all of those things, it was very good. It's a great entry point if that's something that you're looking for into learning a little bit more about the situation. I think from there, if you are more interested, there's definitely other places to dive into. This is just a very entry level point. I think it was well written, and really is something that was exciting to read and delve into, because that was an area that I had not as closely dug into, and so I think it was a good entry point, absolutely, to get into that. So I definitely recommend all three of those. It was good to be able to get through those, and look forward to seeing what I'm going to be reading in May. All right, so what am I reading now? That is definitely exciting. So I am currently reading, I'm concurrently reading 3 books right now, and they're because I am just not capable of reading just one book at a time. You got to have one upstairs, one downstairs. You got your audio. I don't know, wherever you need, wherever you need them, right? So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Fire Sea. It is the third book in the Deathgate cycle. So as you know, I've been reviewing those books one at a time. So I've done book 1 and 2, and so now I'm reading book 3. I'm about halfway through it. It is called Fire Sea, and it is this is where things get dark, both figuratively and literally, in the series. And so I'm definitely excited to jump into it. This one, I remember when I read it the first time, this one has stuck with me quite a bit, just because it is, I don't know that I would call it has a little bit of element of horror, but it definitely is, has a very creepy vibe to it, right? And so, very high level, this is, as we're moving through the 4 worlds of sky, fire, and now this one is stone. And it's called Arabak, for stone. And so Haplo, the main character, is traveling once again to the third world, and for his lord, and this world is very different once again from the other 2, and so he definitely finds things that are unexpected, and I will get into the plot and the review of that as well. But so far, I'm loving it, and it is definitely one that I'm looking forward to talking about. The next book that I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through, this one I'm doing via audio, is called Silvercloak by L.K. Stephen. And it's a relatively recent release. I think the next book in this series comes out at the end of this year. One of my Bookstagram followers that I'm out there loved it, especially the ending. So I jumped at it, got it on my holds from an audio perspective, and jumped in there. And the premise of this one is it's a realm with magic, although not a lot of magic, but those who can use it by funneling their magic through either pleasure or pain. So whatever, the more of each or the other kind of the stronger their magic is. But also, obviously, in both cases, there are limitations that go along with that, right? And so definitely has a lot of implications. The main character, Saffron is the main character. It's kind of this interesting approach of I wouldn't call it like undercover, but basically yes, like she kind of enters this magical trainee world as kind of magical cops or detectives because she wants to get back at a criminal organization that killed her parents. So very straightforward. However, she is then put into this undercover, get in there, kind of like Departed, get in there and you're not a cop anymore. You give yourself to them, but also, take them down from within, give us information, that sort of thing. So, as I said, I'm about three quarters of the way through, so I can't tell you how it ends, but that's basically the premise of it. I'm enjoying it. It's definitely a little different. I do like the magic system. It has definitely grounded in not only reality, but has a level of limitation to it, which I think I like when sometimes it's difficult when magic kind of seems to fix everything. Kind of takes away the risk. So we'll see how it goes, and if it's something that's worth talking about, I'll definitely do so. And the third one, I just started, so I'm only about less than 100 pages in, but I'm enjoying it so far, so we'll see how it goes. This one is a very completely different shift, and it's called IQ by Joe Ide. Ide. I apologize. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that one. Joe Ide. This one is follows the character Isaiah Quintabi, IQ, and he's a private detective, and kind of not. He's a college or high school dropout. He doesn't or a college dropout, but he's incredibly perceptive. Kind of thinking of it as kind of a modern Sherlock Holmes in a different viewpoint, right? But he's also focusing on supporting clients who need their help but can't necessarily afford things. So really trying to help people who need it the most in his neighborhood in East Long Beach. And so that's where it's, and then obviously following how he goes through this in terms of being brought into, the main plot of someone who he knows and trying to stop an assassination and other things that go along with that. So it started off with a bang. He stopped kidnapping, murder from kidnapping and murdering a child in a very explosive way, and because he just happened to notice the right things, and so I'm excited to see where this book goes. Definitely, this was an impulse pickup off the shelf. I know nothing about any of this, but I'm excited to see where that goes. So that's what I'm reading in May. And so, that was April. It was a busy month. I'm excited to have read as much as I've read, and I'm looking forward to May, seeing how that goes as well. Let me know what you read in April, anything that resonated with you, anything that you think I should be picking up just based on what you're hearing from what I'm liking so far. Would love to hear any feedback from any of the books I've talked about, even the ones that I'm reading in May. I would love to see if you thought they were good, and should I continue with either the author or the series, things like that. So looking forward to that. Leave a like and subscribe. I look forward to continuing this journey with everyone. And thank you, everybody who's watching this. I'm new at this, so I'm still learning, but I'm looking forward to continuing to grow. And take care, everybody. And until next time, keep on reading.